The diamonds catch the morning light streaming through the mansion's grand windows, their brilliance almost blinding as they spill from the vacuum bag onto Jane Morrison's trembling palm. Her heart pounds as she stares at what has to be thousands of dollars worth of precious stones, maybe tens of thousands. Little did Jane know that this moment would determine not just her future, but reveal the true measure of her character in ways she never imagined. Just 3 hours earlier, Jane had received the call that shattered her world. "Miss Morrison, this is final notice. You have 72 hours to pay the full amount or face eviction." The landlord's voice had crackled through her ancient flip phone while she scrubbed her small apartment's bathroom floor. $2,300. The number burned in her mind as she'd hung up, her hands shaking as she realized she had exactly $47 in her checking account. Now here she stands in the Jenkins family's pristine living room, holding what could solve every single one of her problems. The irony isn't lost on her. She's spent the last 3 years cleaning this house twice a week, watching the Jenkins family live a life of effortless luxury while she stretched every dollar until it screamed. "Just take them," she whispers to herself, her voice barely audible over the mansion's gentle hum. "They probably don't even know they're missing. Look at this place." Her eyes sweep across the room, taking in the original oil paintings worth more than she makes in a year, the Persian rugs that cost more than her car. But what happened next shocked everyone, because Jane Morrison wasn't just any maid. She carefully places the diamonds on Mrs. Jenkins' mahogany coffee table and sinks into the leather chair she's dusted 1,000 times but never sat in. The weight of her decision presses down on her shoulders like the world itself. She thinks about her mother's voice, still clear after all these years. "Jane, honey, your integrity is the only thing in this world that's truly yours. Don't you ever let anyone take that from you." "Easy for you to say, Mama," Jane speaks to the empty room. "You never faced losing your home." The grandfather clock in the corner chimes 10 times, reminding her that Mrs. Jenkins will be home from her yoga class in an hour. Jane has cleaned around that clock every Tuesday and Friday for 3 years, has listened to its steady rhythm while she worked, but today it sounds like a countdown to her doom. She picks up one diamond, rolling it between her fingers. It's perfect, flawless, probably worth more than she makes in 6 months. Her phone buzzes with a text from her best friend Linda. "Girl, did you figure out the rent situation? My cousin knows people who can help, no questions asked, if you know what I mean." Jane knows exactly what Linda means, and the timing feels like a sign from the universe. But the real shock was still coming, because as she sits there wrestling with temptation, she hears the familiar sound of Mrs. Jenkins' Mercedes pulling into the driveway an hour early. Panic shoots through her veins as she scrambles to gather the diamonds, her mind racing through possibilities. She could pocket them now, finish her cleaning, and Mrs. Jenkins would never know. The woman has so much jewelry she probably hasn't noticed these are missing. Jane could pay her rent, keep her apartment, maybe even fix her car's broken air conditioning before the summer heat becomes unbearable. The front door opens with its distinctive creak that Jane has been meaning to suggest they fix. "Jane, dear, are you here?" Mrs. Jenkins' voice calls out, warm and familiar. "I brought you some of those cookies you love from the bakery downtown." This decision would change everything, and Jane knows it. She clutches the diamonds tighter, feeling their sharp edges press into her palm as footsteps approach the living room where she sits frozen, caught between desperation and the values that have defined her entire life. The sound of heels clicking on marble grows louder, and Jane realizes she has exactly 10 seconds to decide who she really is. Jane's hands trembled as she held the small velvet pouch containing the diamonds. The morning's eviction notice still burned in her memory, but something deeper gnawed at her conscience. She'd been cleaning for the Jenkins family for over 3 years now, and Mrs. Eleanor Jenkins had always treated her with genuine kindness. "Jane, dear, you look troubled," Mrs. Jenkins had said just last week, noticing the stress lines creeping around Jane's eyes. They'd sat in the pristine kitchen, sharing coffee while Eleanor insisted on hearing about Jane's week. It was a ritual they developed, one that made Jane feel less like hired help and more like family. Eleanor Jenkins wasn't like the other wealthy clients Jane had worked for over the years. She remembered birthdays, asked about Jane's dreams of opening her own cleaning service, and had even helped Jane's nephew get a scholarship interview at the local community college. The woman valued honesty above everything else, often saying, "Integrity is the only currency that never loses its value." Jane squeezed the pouch tighter. How could she even consider keeping something that belonged to such a generous woman? Her phone buzzed. Linda Rodriguez, her best friend since high school, was calling for the third time today. "Girl, you sound stressed," Linda said the moment Jane answered. "What's going on?" Jane hesitated, then found herself spilling everything about the diamonds and the eviction notice. Linda listened in stunned silence. "Wait, hold up," Linda finally said. "You found diamonds? Real ones?" "Jane, this could be your way out of everything. My cousin Miguel, he knows people who deal with valuable items. No questions asked. You could get enough money to save your apartment and still have plenty left over." The suggestion hit Jane like a punch to the stomach. "Linda, I can't steal from Mrs. Jenkins. She's been nothing but kind to me." "It's not stealing if they don't even know the diamonds exist," Linda pressed. "Think about it, Jane. When was the last time you saw her wear fancy jewelry? They probably forgot they even had them. Rich people lose track of their expensive stuff all the time." But Linda didn't understand. Jane's mother, Maria, had cleaned houses her entire life and had always taught Jane that a person's character was measured by what they did when no one was watching. Even when they'd struggled to pay rent in their tiny apartment, Maria never took so much as a forgotten quarter from a client's house. "Mija," her mother used to say, "we may not have much money, but we have our dignity. That's something no one can take from us, and something we must never give away." Jane closed her eyes, remembering her mother's weathered hands and the pride in her voice. Maria had passed away 2 years ago, but her lessons remained as clear as ever. What would she think if she knew Jane was even considering keeping the diamonds? The thought made Jane's stomach churn with shame, yet the eviction notice on her kitchen counter seemed to mock her moral struggle. "I need to think about this, Linda," Jane said, ending the call. She was still wrestling with her conscience when her phone rang again. This time, it was Mrs. Jenkins herself. "Jane, darling, I hope you don't mind the last-minute invitation, but Harrison and I would absolutely love for you to attend our annual charity gala this Saturday evening. We're honoring community heroes this year, and frankly, we can't think of anyone more deserving than you." Jane nearly dropped the phone. The Jenkins Gala was legendary in their social circle, a black tie affair that raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for local charities each year. "Mrs. Jenkins, that's so generous, but I don't have anything appropriate to wear to such a fancy event," Jane stammered. "Nonsense. I have several gowns that would be perfect for you. Please say you'll come, Jane. It would mean the world to us." The invitation felt like a sign, though Jane wasn't sure what kind. Would this be her opportunity to come clean about the diamonds, or was fate testing her resolve in the cruelest way possible? As Jane hung up the phone, the weight of the velvet pouch seemed to grow heavier in her palm. The gala was only 3 days away, and she had a decision that would define who she really was. The weight of the diamonds in Jane's pocket feels heavier with each passing hour. She sits at her kitchen table, staring at the eviction notice that arrived just this morning, the red final stamp seeming to mock her from across the room. Her phone buzzes incessantly with collection calls she refuses to answer. "Girl, you're being ridiculous," Linda says, pacing around Jane's cramped apartment. "These people have everything. They won't even notice a few missing stones." She points to the designer purses scattered across Jane's coffee table from her cleaning jobs. "Look at what they throw around like it's nothing." Jane's hands shake as she touches the small velvet pouch hidden in her apron. "My mama always said that what we do when nobody's watching defines who we really are." "Your mama's been gone for 5 years, Jane. She can't pay your rent." The harsh words sting, but before Jane can respond, her doorbell rings. Through the peephole, she sees a postal worker holding an envelope. Her heart sinks, expecting another bill, but when she opens it, her breath catches. It's a check for $300 from Mrs. Patterson, an elderly client whose dress Jane had altered months ago. "I know it's not much, "But I wanted to thank you for your beautiful work on my anniversary dress," reads the handwritten note. "You made an old woman feel beautiful again." Tears stream down Jane's face as she clutches the check. For a moment, hope flickers in her chest. Maybe this is a sign, maybe things will work out without compromising her integrity. But as she calculates her debts, reality crashes back down. $300 barely covers a fourth of what she owes. Linda rolls her eyes. "See? The universe is telling you to take care of yourself first. That old lady gave you pocket change while you're about to be homeless." But something deeper troubles Jane. Yesterday, while cleaning the Jenkins master bedroom, she noticed Mrs. Jenkins examining her jewelry box with unusual intensity, her brow furrowed with concern. When Jane asked if everything was all right, Mrs. Jenkins had looked directly at her with those piercing blue eyes and said, "Jane, you've been with us for 3 years. I trust you completely, but lately, I feel like something's different." The memory sends chills down Jane's spine. Does Mrs. Jenkins suspect something? The woman has an uncanny ability to read people, a quality that made Jane admire her even more. That evening, as Jane prepares her cleaning supplies for tomorrow's gala setup, her phone rings. It's another collection agent, his voice sharp and threatening. "Ms. Morrison, if we don't receive payment within 48 hours, we'll be forced to pursue other collection methods. Your credit score will be destroyed, and legal action may follow." Jane hangs up, her hands trembling. She pulls out the diamonds, watching them catch the dim light from her desk lamp. Each stone represents months of rent, food security, a chance to breathe again. But they also represent everything her mother taught her never to become. She thinks about the gala tomorrow night, how Mrs. Jenkins had personally invited her to help with the final preparations. "Jane, you're not just our employee," Mrs. Jenkins had said warmly. "You're family. I want you there to see how beautiful everything looks when it all comes together." The word family echoes in Jane's mind as she stares at the diamonds. Real family doesn't steal from each other. Real family trusts completely, the way Mrs. Jenkins trusts her. As midnight approaches, Jane makes a decision that terrifies and liberates her simultaneously. She's going to tell Mrs. Jenkins everything at the gala tomorrow night. Whatever happens after that, she'll face with a clear conscience. But as she drifts off to sleep, Jane doesn't know that Mrs. Jenkins has already discovered several pieces of jewelry are missing, and tomorrow's gala will become the stage for a confrontation that will change both their lives forever. The elegant chandeliers cast a golden glow across the Jenkins estate as Jane stands at the entrance of the grand ballroom, her heart hammering against her ribs. The diamonds feel impossibly heavy in her small purse, each facet catching the light like tiny stars of guilt. She smooths down her borrowed black dress. Linda had insisted she looked presentable enough for the gala, and takes a shaky breath. "You can do this, Jane," she whispers to herself, scanning the crowd of well-dressed guests mingling with champagne flutes and practiced smiles. But as she moves through the opulent room, something stops her cold. Through the French doors leading to Mr. Jenkins' study, she catches sight of heated gestures and raised voices. Her employer's usual composed demeanor has cracked completely. "Margaret, we can't keep pretending everything's fine." Mr. Jenkins' voice carries despite the closed door. "The investment portfolio took a massive hit. We're hemorrhaging money faster than we can replace it." Mrs. Jenkins clutches her pearl necklace, her face pale. "But the insurance, surely the missing jewelry will be covered." Jane's blood turns ice cold. Missing jewelry. The diamonds in her purse suddenly feel like burning coals. The insurance adjuster is already asking questions, Mr. Jenkins continues, running his hands through his graying hair. "If they discover we can't account for every piece, they'll deny the entire claim. We could lose everything, Margaret. The house, the business, our reputation." The weight of what Jane has been carrying crashes over her like a tidal wave. These aren't just valuable stones, they're the Jenkins family's lifeline. Her fingers tremble as she reaches into her purse, touching the small velvet pouch. Just as she gathers the courage to approach the study, a familiar voice calls out behind her. "Jane? Jane Morrison, is that really you?" She spins around to find Mrs. Patterson, an old family friend of the Jenkins, beaming at her with surprise. The elderly woman's timing couldn't be worse. "My dear, how wonderful to see you here. Margaret mentioned you might attend. You look absolutely lovely." Jane forces a smile, her eyes darting toward the study where the Jenkins argument continues. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. It's wonderful to be here. You simply must tell me about that seamstress work you've been doing. Margaret raves about your talent with alterations." Every second of small talk feels like torture as Jane watches Mr. Jenkins pace behind the glass doors. She needs to reach them, needs to end this nightmare, but Mrs. Patterson launches into a lengthy story about her granddaughter's wedding dress alterations. The evening reaches its crescendo as Mr. Jenkins calls for everyone's attention, tapping his champagne flute with a silver spoon. The crowd hushes expectantly as he raises his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight and celebrating another year of friendship and community. In times like these, we're reminded that true wealth isn't measured in material possessions, but in the relationships we." Suddenly, the lights flicker once, twice, then plunge the entire ballroom into darkness. Gasps echo through the crowd as emergency lighting kicks in, casting eerie shadows across startled faces. "Don't panic, everyone," Mrs. Jenkins announces, though her voice wavers slightly. "It's just a power outage. The generators will restore full lighting momentarily." In the dim emergency lighting, Jane feels the universe itself pushing her toward this moment. Her heart pounds so loudly she's certain everyone can hear it. Then, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd, she hears her name called from across the room. "Jane? Jane Morrison?" She turns, and her world tilts completely off its axis. Standing in the doorway, looking as shocked as she feels, is her estranged brother Alex. His construction worker's clothes stand out starkly against the formal attire of the other guests. "What are you doing here?" she breathes, her carefully laid plans crumbling around her. Alex's eyes narrow as he takes in her dress, the elegant surroundings, the diamonds hidden in her purse. "I could ask you the same thing, sis. Funny how you can afford to attend fancy parties when you can't return my phone calls about Dad's medical bills." The accusation hits like a physical blow. Around them, guests begin to notice the family drama unfolding, whispers spreading like wildfire through the dimly lit ballroom. Jane realizes with crystalline clarity that there's only one way forward now. Her secret has become too heavy to carry alone, and the Jenkins family's desperate conversation still echoes in her mind. With trembling legs, she steps toward the small stage where Mr. Jenkins had been speaking. "Excuse me," she says, her voice barely audible above the crowd's murmur. The grand ballroom falls into complete silence as Jane stands at the microphone, her trembling hands reaching into her worn purse. The crystal chandelier above casts dancing light across the stunned faces of the wealthy elite, all waiting to see what this humble maid could possibly have to say. 6 weeks ago, Jane begins, her voice barely above a whisper before gaining strength. "I found something while cleaning your home, Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins. Something that could have solved all my problems." She pulls out the small velvet pouch, her fingers shaking as she opens it, revealing the brilliant diamonds that catch the light like captured stars. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Mrs. Jenkins covers her mouth, tears already forming in her eyes as recognition dawns. These are her grandmother's diamonds, the ones she thought were lost forever during the recent renovations. "I had an eviction notice that morning," Jane continues, her voice breaking with emotion. "My electricity was about to be shut off. My car was being repossessed. Every logical part of me screamed to keep these, to sell them, to save myself." She looks directly at Mrs. Jenkins, who is now openly weeping. "But every night, I heard my mother's voice telling me that our character isn't defined by what we do when people are watching, it's defined by what we do when no one will ever know." The room is so quiet that the sound of Alex stepping forward from the crowd seems deafening. Jane's estranged brother, the one who abandoned their family when their mother got sick, stands with tears streaming down his face. "Jane," he whispers, "I came here tonight to ask you for money. I heard through Linda that you might have found a way out of poverty, and I wanted my piece. But seeing you here, doing this. His voice cracks. I remember why Mom always said you were the strongest of us all. Mr. Jenkins rises from his seat, his usually stern face soft with wonder. Jane, do you understand what you've done? These diamonds, they've been in my wife's family for 4 generations. We thought they were gone forever. The insurance company settled the claim months ago. He walks toward the stage, his voice filled with awe. You could have kept them, and we never would have known they still existed. Mrs. Jenkins joins her husband, taking Jane's hands in hers. All these months, I watched you work with such dedication, such integrity. I knew there was something special about you, but this. She looks at the diamonds, then back at Jane. This is extraordinary. The transformation happens in real time, visible to everyone in the room. Jane's shoulders straighten, the weight of her secret finally lifted. The shame and desperation that had haunted her features for weeks melts away, replaced by a quiet dignity that seems to light her from within. I need you to know, Jane says, addressing the entire room now, that this decision wasn't easy. There were moments I convinced myself that keeping them would hurt no one, that wealthy people like you wouldn't even miss them. But every time I looked at these diamonds, I saw my mother's disappointed face. I saw the woman who raised me to believe that our integrity is the only thing that truly belongs to us. Mr. Jenkins pulls out his phone, making a quick call. Consider your eviction rescinded, he tells Jane. In fact, consider your housing situation permanently resolved. We're buying you a home, Jane. It's the least we can do. He pauses, emotion thick in his voice. And we'd like to offer you a position as our house manager, with full benefits, a salary that reflects your true worth, and the respect you've always deserved. The crowd erupts in applause, but Jane's eyes remain fixed on Mrs. Jenkins, who is now holding the diamonds close to her heart. These belong to my grandmother, who came to America with nothing but the clothes on her back and these diamonds sewn into her coat, Mrs. Jenkins explains to the room. She always said they would find their way to someone who truly understood their value, not their monetary worth, but what they represented about the power of doing what's right. Linda Rodriguez pushes through the crowd, tears streaming down her face as she embraces her best friend. I'm so sorry, she whispers. I should have supported your conscience instead of tempting you to ignore it. You're the strongest person I know. As the evening winds down, Jane finds herself surrounded by new friends, new opportunities, and most importantly, a renewed sense of self-worth. The woman who entered this gala carrying the weight of impossible choices leaves as someone transformed, not by the diamonds she could have kept, but by the integrity she chose to preserve. Months later, Jane looks back on that night as the moment her real life began. The eviction notice that once terrified her now hangs framed in her new home office, a reminder that our darkest moments often precede our greatest triumphs. She learned that sometimes, the most valuable things we can possess are the things we choose to give away. The diamonds found their rightful home, but more importantly, Jane found hers, not just in the beautiful house Mr. Jenkins purchased for her, but in the knowledge that she had faced her ultimate test and emerged with her soul intact. In a world that often rewards shortcuts and moral compromises, Jane Morrison proved that integrity isn't just its own reward, sometimes, it's the key to everything we never knew we deserved.